Hi, folks, and welcome back to The Scoop. I'm Steve Boyce. We're broadcasting live from the Experiential Marketing Summit, the 20th anniversary of this fantastic event for brand marketers and those who lead brands, own brands, are the steward of brands, and engage with those who love those brands. We're having a great time here on The Scoop. We've got a great lineup this afternoon of featured speakers and segments for you, so stay tuned here to catch all the excitement of this amazing event as we're broadcasting live from Las Vegas, Nevada. But right now, we have a special treat for you. One of our keynote speakers from EMS. I'm joined today by Cliff Rigano. Cliff, welcome to The Scoop. Great to see you.
Hello, sir.
Thanks for being on the broadcast. Now, folks, Cliff is Creative Director, Head of Culture, Content, and Experiential Marketing with a brand we all know and love, Jägermeister. What a wonderful brand.
Yes, sir.
Now, Cliff, I'm a little disappointed. I thought you might bring some of the product here to the set to really kick off our segment, but maybe that's not allowed here at EMS.
I try to wait till the end of the segment before we start our drinking. I figure that might be the best way to start.
I think that's a better strategy. So when we're done, we'll toast a glass together. Cliff, it's great to have you here on The Scoop. Now, later in the week here, I think tomorrow, you're going to be presenting a keynote session here at EMS. Got that titled as Cross-Channel Strategies, What the Last 2 Years Mean for the Next 2 Years. Now, I think our audience is well aware, Cliff, of the context for that, right?
Yes.
We've been through 2 painful years of pandemic, had a huge impact on the experiential marketing industry. And yet now we seem to be coming out of that, right? Fingers crossed.
Yes.
So that's a really exciting session. I know folks are going to be packing the room for that. Let's start there and give a little bit of a preview for those folks who are here in Vegas. Don't miss that session. What do they have to look forward to in that program?
As we think about the last 2 years, to your point, it's been impactful in a variety of ways. It's been very singular in the sense that people have been affected economically, socially, physically, geographically, but it's been so personalized that there hasn't been a large opportunity for people to share that. So what we've seen is that there's been a divide. People start to segment themselves out, and what we're starting to notice are large cultural trends. When we think about what brands can do to help consumers and drive purpose and meaning, the learnings have been significant. So as we think about moving forward and the idea of what got us here won't keep us here, there's a rich set of ideas and opportunities to lean into that we can take forward. Only the best parts of the last 2 years will join us for the next 2 years.
That's fantastic. Leave the bad stuff behind, carry the good stuff forward. So I suspect that you're going to be advising brands to really be thoughtful about the experience they've had over the past 2 years. Don't just try to put it in the rearview mirror. There are lessons there that are going to help you be successful going forward.
Correct. And I think that, ultimately consumers have shifted. There's been such a seismic learning in how consumers connect with their favorite brands, with their favorite artists, with other like-minded audiences, and what drives those conversations, whether it's purpose, whether it's sustainability, whether it's the idea of an elevated experience. So the thought around it is really to drive the notion that consumers see brands in different segments and different channels. What are you saying within those, and how do you tie that together so a consumer understands your position in a new way of learning how to deal with, how to learn from brands and how to take new opportunities with them? So this ultimately becomes an exercise in how brands have to shift and have to shift their thinking in order to remain relevant.
Wonderful. So we're going to come back to that in just a few moments. I want to explore more with you how brands have to shift that thinking to maintain their relevance. We're going to talk about some different new audiences that are coming up. We hear a lot about Gen Z all of a sudden here at EMS.
Yep.
I was just getting to know the millennials, and now there's a new cohort coming along. But before we do that, I want to make sure our audience fully appreciates your brand, because we're going to get into some of the activations and programs that you've been creating and running to really give some rich examples for the audience. So let's start with a little bit of background on Jägermeister, right? We're all familiar with the brand, I think, to some extent, but a little bit of the history would be fantastic. This is a storied brand.
Sure. Jägermeister loosely translates to master hunter. So Jägermeister is actually 56 ingredients, herbs, roots, fruits, and spices sourced from around the world. They create 5 different macerates, so think of teas, and each one has a particular head note. Those macerates steep in grain-neutral spirits for a year, or steep in grain-neutral spirits in a year, and then age in oak after that. They go through 383 quality checks before it goes out the door. So when you think about the liquid of Jägermeister, the heritage, the ingredients, the process, born in 1878, still the same recipe, there's a rich set of learning to educate a new consumer. But the things we know about Jägermeister and the things we love about Jägermeister revolve around the idea that it's available in 130 plus countries.
Amazing.
We've sold over 100 million bottles last year alone. We're the #1 shop brand sold worldwide. So what you realize is that as you think about a new consumer and you think about what the brand has to offer, there is a rich story to tell. It just becomes about what's the right way and the right cadence to tell that story.
Absolutely. Now, for folks who may have been shot drinkers for a while, they may be more familiar with the brand. I referenced Gen Z. How do you go about introducing your brand to new consumers who pass the age of 21, right? And they're exploring their favorite drinks. Are they interested in the history of a brand, these new consumers, or do they not care?
Consumers have learned that a lot of brands are just trying to sell you what they have to offer. And they'll make up a story and they'll tell you something. But what we've noticed is that consumers appreciate a rich history. They appreciate the idea of learning something. Being able to share that information with their friends as a trusted influence and a trusted source of knowledge is important. So we feel confident that there's the right story to tell. To your point, the question is, what's the right time to engage that audience? And we've used all different channels and verticals to bring consumers along, whether you are a consumer that loves Jägermeister or a consumer that may have never heard about Jägermeister, which is, if you can imagine, that is still possible. We have a path for your journey with the brand individually. And I think that comes out of the last 2 years as well. I'm Gen X. And,
as am I.
Yes, and I remember being the generation that would kick back adulthood. We always said that, we demand experience, we demand something more. Millennials came behind us and said, yes, we demand experience too, and we want it to be personal. Make it about us. And what we've noticed with Gen Z is that they walk in and they say, well, I am the experience. I am the influence, I am the channel, I am the outlet, I am the trusted voice. If you are going to build an experience, you should probably build it around me.
Incredible.
And if you think about just those three perspectives of audiences, that is a wide range of influence to wield. That is a wide range of decision making to consider. But this is how brands must operate in the context of today's consumer mindset. So.
It's incredibly complex, and lest we forget the baby boomers, many of them still around, still enjoying Jägermeister.
Of course,
an entirely different cohort with, I assume, a different consumer mindset.
Yes, and what I would say is that we love all consumers that love Jägermeister, right? Jägermeister is for the people. But what we see is that strategically, the largest volumetric opportunity is with 21 to 29-year-olds. They are just out more. They are more social. They are more sort of cognizant of the world around them, and they like to share their experiences. So we see the richest opportunity strategically with that audience. But yes, Jägermeister is for all that enjoy it.
Wonderful. I love that. Now let's talk about the folks who are 21, 29, or even the older folks, the last 2 years, especially in the early part of the pandemic. Restaurants shut down, bars shut down. You couldn't go out anywhere.
Right.
This had to be a major disruption for your brand, also for your ecosystem of stakeholders, right? So share with us a little bit, Cliff, what was that early part of the pandemic like for Jägermeister? What were some of the impacts that you were feeling? And how did you go about trying to ameliorate those with different strategies?
Sure. The shutdown of the on-premise channel at the beginning of the pandemic was difficult for everyone, right? I mean, that's not only a volumetric loss, but that is a loss of industry. Right. And Jägermeister was born in the 90s, when music was the cultural North Star, when discovery happened in small to medium-sized music venues and scale occurred during radio. So what we noticed was, listen, there's only so many places you can put a bottle in a back bar. Having a strategy around music allowed the brand to have a secondary marketing point on the stage. And when a singer raises a shot of Jägermeister and tells the crowd to join them, that is a powerful moment. And building the brand that way built real relationships with these venues, with bartenders, heart of house communities, the artists that played on those stages, and the audience that came to see them.
Yes.
And when the pandemic hit, those were the first rooms to close, the last ones ultimately to open. Bartenders and heart of house communities are thinking about changing their careers. Artists can't perform, audiences can't engage. And so what we noticed was that it was more than just the loss of a channel. It was more about the people that helped us build this brand are radically affected. And as a brand that has a position in culture, we felt like we should do something significant, which is where we began our programming called Save the Night, which is a program that's been going on for the last 2 years. And it is a program rooted in the idea of helping to support local communities. Began when they were closed. It continues now that they are open. But the purpose behind the program and the value with which it offers evolves, just like all things should.
Sure.
But it's become the root of how we think about the brand's meaning to local communities, to consumers, and to creatives around the world.
Wonderful. And Cliff, first of all, I think it's fantastic. I want to get into Save the Night in more detail. That focus on local communities and essentially the partners in your business success, right? The bars, the restaurants, the artists, other cultural elements. They were impacted so directly, and yet what we're hearing, and we've had a couple of segments here on The Scoop, is the importance and power of community-based engagement, local-based engagement, not always taking a top-down approach, but really getting in and doing some of the grassroots work. Is that a fundamental component of this program? And tell us a little bit more about how that's been rolled out.
It's a great call out, and it's absolutely true. You can have an ideology rooted in a global position, but the truth is that if consumers don't see it and feel it in their markets, it's hard to really qualify what it means. Save the Night was an idea that we need to be supporting local communities at scale, but there's a variety of ways to do that in different manners. So when we think about the artists and the audience primarily, let's start there. We've built programs and platforms that were designed to not only allow the artists the opportunity to continue to perform, right, so to get back to normal, but we wanted to drive value for audiences that couldn't see their favorite band. So how can we make a deeper connection in this moment where we're all very isolated? How can we kind of bring people together? So we began with we serviced briefs to hundreds of musicians to create music that we put global licenses on that we featured in all of our content. We went out and we briefed stop motion animators, videographers, photographers to create compelling social content. And these were all paid briefs. So, and we relicensed the content year over year. So what we're doing is putting people back to work. And we're giving you features and opportunities on social channels where if it is dried up in one channel for you, let Jägermeister provide another one. And then what we wanted to do for the community-based folks, the bartenders, the heart of house communities, and the venues, we partnered with credible charity-based platforms to drive relevant messaging. So when we think about venues, we partnered with the National Independent Venue Association, which is a 501c3 that represents over 3,000 venues worldwide, independent venues. And what they do is they were lobbyists. So they went to the government and they said, listen, as part of your recovery package, we need a certain amount of money built in for independent venues. So we were able to donate to their emergency relief fund, but also build a campaign called Our Stages, Our Stories, which amplified this message, with a call to action for consumers to just go donate themselves. Just go donate. Go to a bar when it reopens. Just participate and help support. So that was what we were focused on for the venues. When we think about the bartenders, we partnered with the United States Bartenders Guild, which is a accredited 501c3 charity that speaks to the trade industry at large. And that was both donations and platforms to help put them back to work, servicing brief to make Jägermeister drinks that will feature on our channels. So a lot of things were designed not only to support, but to normalize, to put people back to work, just to try to get things to start to feel normal, because that's the first step in recovery.
Such a huge first step and such a thoughtful approach to all of the key stakeholders that ultimately have been contributors to the success of your brand and of your organization, and giving back that purpose-driven sort of approach is, I think, again, something we're hearing a lot about. Now, this may sound a little, I don't know, cynical or controversial, but I sense that a lot of brands are attempting to become purpose-driven because it sounds like the right thing to do, and because it's attractive to some of our younger generations, right? The millennials love authenticity and genuineness, purpose-driven brands. It doesn't sound to me, though, Cliff, like Jägermeister is a Johnny-come-lately to the being a purpose-driven brand. This goes back deeply in the organization, doesn't it?
Yes. The brand has been rooted in culture for so long, supporting artists and supporting the communities and the audiences they serve. And I can tell you that supporting creative communities at times can border on philanthropy because you're never quite sure who's going to go on in their careers, right? It's a bit of an investment, but you do it because it's the right thing to do. You do it because there's a purpose behind it. You realize that these communities need help and Jägermeister can provide a resource. As we think about the brands that have found greater value more recently, I can't speak to what brought them there.
Okay.
I do agree that a lot of consumer research suggests that if you want to make those types of connections, you must be thinking in these ways. So if that is the data that finally allows you to take a look at it authentically, then that's the right way to do it. But to your point earlier, consumers are very smart, tech savvy, digital forward, purpose driven, and they will smell you out pretty quickly if you are trying to pull one over on them. And that is kind of the beauty of the new generation, is there is just no more lying. There is no more pretending. No, you can't fake it. And to be honest, that's a benefit. Kudos to everyone who's not allowing that anymore. I salute them. I believe that this is important for consumers to keep attention on brands. And Jägermeister understands that too. We've supported music and culture for decades now, going back to the 90s. And again, that cultural North Star and supporting local artists. And we've built a global position within culture that's allowed us to scale Save the Night in an incredible way, and we're very fortunate for it.
Wonderful. And I'm so disappointed to hear that the 90s were decades ago. Time is flying by. It was a wonderful decade.
I don't disagree.
A lot of good memories. It's hard to believe we're already in the 20s here.
Yeah.
Folks, if you've just joined us here on The Scoop, we're talking live with Cliff Rigano from Jägermeister, having a great conversation about some of the programs that they put together, Save the Night and others, to help their stakeholders manage their way through the very difficult pandemic. Cliff, I want to come back now to, as you were talking about earlier in our discussion, taking the lessons learned from that difficult time. And now as we go forward, we're trying to answer questions of, well, what comes next, right? And so love to get your perspectives on kind of the mix of engagement modalities, right? A lot of folks we've been talking to are, of course, eager to be back doing in-person engagement, in-person marketing programs, promotions, et cetera. And are wondering, well, what's the right mix and balance? Do I still have to do virtual and digital stuff? How do I know what's the right mix for my given community or audience? Perspectives on how brands might think about answering those questions.
Sure. And listen, these are questions that are rising every day in different ways and different channels. For us, we try to keep research and the audience at the center of everything we do. Continuing to understand audience shifts, both macro and micro, is key to how we approach both culture and the business. But really, it's about understanding the role of innovation to drive change. It's about the understanding of people over products, right? Whether you're building a corporate culture or whether you're speaking to a consumer. It's the idea of synergy over silos, and no great success can ever happen alone. We're so used to just doing things in one silo. You have a KPI, you execute it. But the truth is, if you think about a consumer's integrated experience with the brand, to operate in a silo in commercial, in PR, in digital, would only allow you to have disjointed messaging. We must start to think about how we connect messages with the consumer. And I think that's where integration, conversion, that's where these things really start to land. And then there's leadership changes, right? To quote Winston Churchill, courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. And as you think about leadership when the world is upside down, what does that look and feel like? Sometimes it's a mix of both, a thoughtful, careful mix of both. So really, leaders, business owners, there's a tremendous opportunity moving forward. The idea is not to get intimidated by it and shift to the past. I'll do experience for experience sake. I'll think linearly. I'll just do it because it's what I've done
all the time, and it feels comfortable and not so risky.
Those are the activations, I think, that most people look at immediately and go, this feels like things I've seen before. Where the most exciting things are the things that maybe we haven't. And that's just a natural reaction. The universe seems to be speaking to everyone listening. So,
absolutely. And by the way, I have to note that you have elevated the discourse here on The Scoop with your quoting of Winston Churchill. I love that. To our future guests, bring your great quotes from famous diplomats. It'll certainly enhance our program. No, I actually love it. And I want to touch on a point that you made about not just looking at a particular activation with a single KPI, and you were taking a more holistic approach. It's something that I talked with Matt Grant about in a previous segment, Matt from Impact XM. He's advising his clients from a data perspective to do the same thing, right? Like, you can't be so narrowly focused as you're looking to measure success of programs. You really have to look at the broader campaign or program. At Jägermeister, you've talked about research that you use and staying focused on the consumer. Is data an important part of that? And do you intentionally capture data through your marketing campaigns and promotions and activations as a way to inform your future program strategy and design.
Yep, data is key, whether it's long-term brand research studies, whether it is social engagement impacts, whether it is the idea of understanding how commercial programs work and where we see consumers engaging with enter to wins or experience. All of this feeds how to optimize because consumer mindsets change in real time. So even if we run a program in H1, by H2, the whole methodology may be upended because there may be something different or something better.
Right.
And we, as a as an organization, keep attention on making sure that we have that in view at all times. It's not always the most comfortable information, to see change is imminent, right? We move faster every day. But it is the idea that if you want to be ahead of it, you must be aware of it. Doesn't mean you have to action everything, but it means you must be cognizant of those changes, and then you make determinations based on what's best for your business. So yes, data plays a critical role in how we look at both short, medium, and long-term success, or all three.
One of the themes that you talk about and you've touched on is cross-channel strategies, the convergence of channels. We touched a little bit on the balance between sort of in-person and virtual, but I don't want to make it so binary because there's multiple channels.
Yep.
This is an area I think that you focus on and specialize in terms of how you roll out your campaigns. When you're putting those together, how do you know what's the right mix of different channels? And is it audience dependent or is it campaign dependent? What are your perspectives on how brands might think further about leveraging multiple channels?
A lot of the determination around success is what success looks like, right? So are you looking to engage? Are you looking for awareness? Are you trying to bring awareness around a product? Do people not know what this is and you need to inform them? Are you trying to drive engagement? They know what it is, but you need to drive a deeper relationship.
Sure.
Are you trying to drive saliency? I need you to remember this one thing about your brand.
Right.
Those three things are wildly different in how you build an integrated program.
Right.
Channels will provide different functions. If it is just awareness, then it's a straight blast to get a name out. If it's engagement, then it has to be a creative, compelling campaign that brings you in. If it is meant to be saliency, then you are driving against a very linear, single idea. And if you think about a consumer that is both a passionate fan of your brand and a consumer that couldn't care less, how do you turn one into the other? How do I take a consumer that's just walking down the street that has no idea about Jägermeister and start to reel them in so they say, I'll change my habits and I'll go have a shot at the bar. And then they have a shot and they say, that was a great experience. Why was it a great experience? And then, oh my gosh, I know why this is a great experience. I'm going to share it with everyone. Tell me more. That ending of I know everything, tell me more is not the same person that was walking by. Content, conversation, experience, communication, platforms play a huge role in how you bring that consumer through the journey. Beat them up too soon with product-based information, you turn them off. Talk to them about a lifestyle they're familiar with, they won't engage. It is a thoughtful journey and you need the right leadership, both at a senior level and at a vertical level, to be able to understand. And then you have to think like an integrated producer and start to think about what that means for each channel. What does a social platform mean for PR? How can I utilize it? How do I utilize it in commercial? What does it look like on a coaster? How do I take it through all the different parts and pieces? And this becomes the beauty of how you really develop an integrated campaign.
Incredible. And for me, someone who doesn't have the skills to do that sort of thing, it sounds incredibly complex, but it sounds incredibly important to be strategic and thoughtful about how each of those component parts accrue to the success of your objectives and the outcomes that you're looking to achieve.
There is no silver bullet on how to do it. The only thing I try to remind myself is that I'm a consumer too. And if I think about the moment when I'm ready to make a determination around when to try something new, a new drink, a new pair of clothes, I'll buy a new branded car, what are the things that I look for to be informed to a place where I feel like this is the right decision, I feel smarter for making the decision, I feel like this is the right decision. If we just think about that kind of within our own context, and we don't assume that we know what people are thinking, but there's a roadmap. To how people get to decision making. And I think that if we start to apply data, we start to apply research, we start to apply thought leadership, all of a sudden the opportunity presents itself.
Wonderful. I want to move to two quick things here as we look to wrap up the segment. Quite frankly, a couple personal fun things for me. I know that Jägermeister has a really successful and important partnership with the National Hockey League. It's my favorite professional sports league, big hockey fan.
Nice one.
Tell us a little bit about that experience and the importance of that to your brand.
Sure. Jägermeister is the official shot of the NHL. And if you think about the last 2 years, it's a multi-year partnership. But if you think about the impact of the last 2 years, we've been starved of these moments collectively, right? You going out with your friends, watching the game, whether it's in a bar or at the actual game, that celebration, that commiseration, whether you win or you lose, there's a great opportunity to share and have in that moment. And a shot of Jägermeister is generally the best pairing with it.
Nice.
So when we think about being the official shot of the NHL, and we think about media, and we think about partnerships, having a league partnership allows us to have contextually relevant conversations at scale. We are able to be the official shot of the league. We are able to activate against their marquee properties, the Winter Classic, the All-Star Game, Stadium Series. But then also we have local team deals with a dozen teams. So now we drive into local fandom and local relevancy. So again, yeah, that's great. I'm a hockey fan and you're the official shot. But what does that mean to me if I'm a New York fan? Well, you will see us activate within your market, within bars, within local, where you go to pregame, you'll see us. Where you go after the game, you'll see us. You'll see us in the venue. You'll see us at local events. So it becomes connecting. We say, yeah, Jägermeister really is about hockey and about sports. And that's how that connection happens.
That's awesome. I want a shot and I want to watch hockey right now. Okay, we got 30 seconds, Cliff. I have to mention, not only are you an expert marketer, and just thank you so much for the incredible perspective you've shared with our audience, but you were the singer of the band Dry Kill Logic. We have to get that on camera. Tell us just 15 seconds about that experience. What role did you play in the band? What was that like for you?
I sold my soul to rock and roll many moons ago. I was the singer in the band, about 16-year career, signed to a variety of different record labels. We were actually, anecdotally, one of the first 10 artists signed to the then fledgling Jägermeister music program.
Oh, fantastic.
Yep. Long, strange trip it's been.
Oh, I love that. Another great quote. Folks, unfortunately, we got to wrap up our time with Cliff Rigano from Jägermeister. Cliff, this has been an incredible conversation. If you're here in Las Vegas, don't miss Cliff's keynote session. It's tomorrow, or no, it's today. No, it is tomorrow. Sorry, tomorrow afternoon, 1:30 local time. Cliff, thank you so much for joining us here on The Scoop. Folks, we'll be back with more great content in just a moment. Stay with us.